Welcome, everybody, to TRB Live. It is the Resistance broadcast, and that means I'm John, that's James, and that's Lacey. The mirror thing, every time it gets me.
You're right here, John, right there.
Yes. So thank you to everybody for joining us on TRB. It's our news show, so to speak, but we're also doing Will of the Force, so we have a really packed, fun show. And what's cool about Will of the Force is you'll be able to put your answers if you're joining us live in the chat and react to our answers, which is always a good time. But I want to thank everybody for being with us, being a part of TRB. It's always a fun time to talk Star Wars, especially with the two we use, James and Lacey. So, James, you're repping the soccer hoodie, right? You got Cincinnati Football Club. How's the club doing this season? Are they off to a good start? Has the season started? No, they haven't started.
But we have two players that just got called up to play in the men's national team.
All right.
Which is, I think, most, I don't want to say most teams, but most, if they got picked, they had one player go. And I think only two teams had two players go. So it goes to show we've got some pretty good players on our team.
Cincy. All right. Yeah. Lacey, what's the deal? Have you gotten over the fact that we are really close to Celebration and the Mandalorian? March 1st and then April 5th for Celebration.
I am not over it. I'm not even over it that we're getting a Willow documentary. I'm not over anything. Everything stays with me.
Yeah.
By the way, I realized missed opportunity for us to do Willow of the Force.
Didn't I say I made it?
Willow they do
John
it,
said
or
that.
Willow they not?
I suggested that.
John,
oh, really?
Yeah,
Willow
totally
the Force. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you said it was dumb, or they would.
I said it was dumb.
Oh, that makes more sense.
I probably didn't respond.
So I sold my car today, and as they to Carvana, and as they drove away with it on the flatbed, I got a little misty-eyed because I had that car for 10 years. Like I was single.
I did the same thing. Like when I sold my car, I got, because it was my college car.
There you go.
So like when the guy drove it away, which first of all, it sounded like such a bad car. Anyway, when he drove it away, like my husband was laughing, and I was just like, I can't believe it's really gone.
It's a real thing with people. You know, my brother had said that he felt the same way. I was like, dude, I feel so weird that I got like kind of emotional about it. But I got that car, you know, it was before I was even dating Kathleen. I was single. I didn't have kids, obviously, and there's just like a different element of my life. And now I have to go tomorrow. I'm off from work. I got to go drive to go look at cars now and stuff. So, but I took, you know, all my items, including my dice, off the mirror. So with the next car, first thing I'm doing, I'm Han Soloing it, popping the dice around the mirror. But end of an era for me. So thank you, Honda Accord, and onward we go. But we're not here to talk about my car. We're here to talk about Star Wars. And I should buy an X-Wing, maybe, huh? Christy in the chat saying, did I upgrade to an X-Wing? Not yet. I don't have that kind of cash. I need maybe Patty Jenkins could give me hers now that she doesn't need it. Too soon? Anyway, just a reminder to people, if you're a fan of Star Wars collectibles, especially the cool folks at Gentle Giant, we just want to let you know that we just have a discount code to offer you. So if you happen to want to be over there buying some stuff at Gentle Giant, if you want 20% off and to keep more of your money to buy $10 dozen eggs, you can use the promo code. Eggs are very expensive right now, as are all. You can use the promo code RESIST20 at checkout and get 20% off. So go do that. Also, we just want to remind everybody, thanks to everyone who got behind us and got us over the hump on the subscriber count for YouTube. Super chats are available if you want your comment vaulted up to the top and also read and reacted to on the show. We appreciate any and all support there, of course, as well as Patreon support. So if you are watching and you enjoy what we do and you want to support us, you can head to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Our tier start at just $5 a month, and you could be a part of the show, and we're going to show you how in just a moment. But there are a lot of other perks as well and other tiers. And Lacey does a great job facilitating that page for us, and it's a good time. All right, so are you guys ready to talk about Star Wars?
Absolutely.
All right, so real quick, James, you do our reviews for the Bad Batch. You're our Bad Batch guy, you're our animation guy, and I don't know, say like I liked the fourth episode of Bad Batch. I like racing. I know that's a big George Lucas always loved. So just on that level, I think I enjoyed it. And if you haven't yet, be sure to watch James's review. But I don't get too overly invested in like every single episode needs to hit and hit hard. There are certain things that they tell to move the story along, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was fine. I don't know how you guys felt about it.
Yeah,
Go ahead, James.
I think the thing with this particular episode is it was long overdue character development for Tech. Because over the past, however long it's been since Bad Batch ended, it's been an ongoing joke of like, all the memes with like, oh, Star Wars fans, and they're like hugging the children or whatever, and they put the names like Omega and Hunter over it, and then like there's the abandoned kid over here, like outside still, like it's snowing, and they'll put like a different one, and then like even further, I think there's a meme where it's like there's a skull like at the bottom of the water or something like that, where it's so long forgotten that people will be like, that's Tech, like just no character development at all.
Yeah.
And in this particular episode, like he really steps up and shows his worth and really kind of provides an angle that you're like, if it was any other Bad Batcher, they just would have failed. But because it's Tech, he's, the mission succeeds and they're able to save the day. So it shows that his value isn't just like a calculator or whatever.
Yeah. That's true. And then getting Echo sort of away from Omega a bit so that she can do other things and engage with other people. And
yeah, I like when, I don't love it when it's happening, but when you get done with a season of a show or you get done with a series and you look back on all the journeys that you've been through, even the mundane ones, it hits harder when it ends or this character's killed off or they don't reach whatever they were trying to do, or however it's going to end. I think the episodes like this is just part of the journey that eventually lead to a strong feelings for a show like the Bad Batch. Like, oh man, sometimes it was boring, but it was worth it. Like, I'm really glad I watched it because I have that now,
Yeah. Oh yeah, Ernie Hudson. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
Voiced one of the characters. That's cool. Yeah. All right. Do we need to get into our first segment of the day?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Will of the Force time. Let's hit it.
I fear nothing, for all is as the Force wills it.
There it is.
Take this one.
Yeah. All right. So Will of the Force, Chirrut Imwe. Thank you for stopping by once again, our friend. It's good to see you, even though you can't see us. So this time we had Greg Grunberg with us last week. By the way, check that interview out. One of, I think, my favorite episodes we've ever done, just because of the type of guy he is. Awesome guy, and a great conversation. But we usually do half we create the Will of the Force, half Patreon. But this time it's all Patreon submissions. So if you are a patron, you can submit topics for us to talk about on the show. And we're going to do that right now. So you're wondering, you're like, I submitted one. Did they pick mine? Well, you're about to find out, and we're going to talk about it. So our first one comes from Commander David Ratcliffe. Thank you, David.
Hello.
And this question is, will we see an Andor behind-the-scenes documentary anytime soon? Of all the Disney Plus series, this is the one I really want to see more about the production process. Lacey, you love these sort of gallery type things. We all do.
I do.
Quite a bit, especially, you're looking forward to the Willow one. But how about Andor? Are we going to get something for Andor?
This is a great question because I was really hoping we would get one. But I know that so far, with the exception of, I think, the first gallery series for Mandalorian, they've all been kind of separated from when the actual series comes out with like some time. So I kind of think there definitely is one. I have a feeling it's going to come out May 4th because
Ooh.
I think they're going to hold it for content later because they want Andor to kind of have its own time. And then I remember for the gallery series with the Mark Hamill kind of visual effects stuff, they held on to that episode until after the award season, and then they had it come out. So I think they're going to hold it for May 4th because Mando and Bad Batch, will it still be going on at that time? I just know that there's so many episodes of Bad Batch, like 14, 16 episodes of Bad Batch.
No, it shouldn't be that
Mando
long.
will be done. Yeah.
Okay, so
They'll
there'll
both
be
done. Yeah.
there'll be a little bit of a gap there. I think it will have its time to shine. It will make people want to go back and watch Andor. So I'm going to say May 4th. I think that we're going to get it.
Interesting. James, are we getting any kind of documentary on the making of Andor?
Yes, but I don't really know when. I actually meant to do a little bit of research and I just didn't have time today, but I was going to look at like when they all came out in relation to each other, in relation to when the series ended. But I do kind of feel like they've fallen further and further back. And we got the Under the Helmet thing before Book of Boba Fett came out. Did we get a gallery on Book of Boba Fett or the making of Book of Boba Fett? Am I forgetting that?
I don't remember.
No, I don't think we did.
Yeah.
So my thought on this is they still haven't even done that. I don't know that they'll do an Andor one, but they have a lot of, I don't know, they put a lot into that show money-wise, so it makes me feel like they would try to wring it out as much as they possibly can. So I think they're going to do it. But it could be something where they go back and they look at the series after the second season's done.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think in the chat, Kyle had chimed in that he thinks that Mando Season 3's gallery will be May the 4th. That's a total valid point. I just think if they did do one for Andor, what would be a good timing at this point to show it? It would be May 4th. And we know going into later parts of this conversation in the show that Disney is having conversations about their streaming service and what can they do and good use of content and keeping people around and not having that churn of people dipping from Disney Plus. I think to keep them around, they've got to spread stuff out. So that's why I'm saying Andor.
Yeah, the first Disney gallery came out on May 4th, 2020, which was, 4 or 5 months after the finale of season 1. So it's something to think about. Maybe it'll be a late summer thing. But May 4th would be, I hope you're right. I hope Kyle's right. I hope May 4th would be cool. My
that
answer
one was
on this,
weird too, because they did multiple episodes.
They did. That
like,
was a
it felt
big
like
one.
they did it for like a
Yeah.
segment of the show or something. And then the second season was like they did one that
One or
was like
two.
everything but the
Yeah.
final episode. And then they
Yeah.
like did another one for the final episode. It's so weird. There's no context of there's no precedent for how they do these.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna say I don't think we're gonna get one for Andor. I just think Tony Gilroy is a very like I don't care sort of person. Like he does his productions and maybe he's not as inviting as other creators. He seems very closed in, closed off, and my way or the highway. We didn't really get a ton. We didn't really get any like massive making of Rogue One stuff, and he reshot a lot of that movie. I could just see him saying like, "No, I'm making a show here. I don't need a camera crew following us around. I'm not here to do interviews. I'm here to make a show." Like I see him as that type of guy. So it wouldn't shock me if they didn't get one for that series just because of how Tony Gilroy operates. So I hope I'm wrong, but variety is the spice of life. And I saw in the comments someone said there was a Disney gallery for Boba Fett. And
May the 4th, Kyle had chimed in, and so Susan Smith as well had said that there was one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And we all
Disney
forgot.
Gallery. Yep.
Guys, it's all blending together.
Yeah. I obviously watched this. I obviously loved it. It's like it's just
we
one of those
obviously
things where,
talked about it on the podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, next one here. Major Brennan Marr. Thank you, Brennan. He said, will we ever see the theft, and he put that in quotes, of the Darksaber from the Jedi Temple during the fall of the Old Republic?
Oof.
Tough question.
question.
Interesting question. Like it a lot. That's why it was picked. James, are we going to see that? Are we going to finally see Old Republic, first of all? And second of all, are we going to see the theft of the Darksaber, which is alluded to in the Clone Wars?
I don't think so. I'm going to say no on this because I think that it's just enough of a piece of lore that they can keep it as a piece of lore, and it doesn't necessarily have to fall into the category of like something we gotta see. Like, we've already been told that story, and that's the stories happen after it. That's just like a setup point of like, well, everything there, there was this, there was the beginning, and then there was everything after it, and that's where all the interesting stuff happens. This just feels like the beginning of something. And the closest I think we ever got to this was the thing in Rebels where they sort of animate it, they sort of illustrate it for just not the storyteller's purpose, but the story listener's purpose of like, in your mind's eye, this is kind of what it was like. But I don't think they intend to actually ever go in and show us that happening. I think it's
to check the box for you.
Yeah.
Lacey, what do you think?
It's an interesting question. I really appreciate this because I always seem to never think back on things. Like, I always tend to like take the Star Wars story and where we're at and where we're going, and rather than like, how did we get to point A and to point B and whatever. I think they will go into it, especially because that's such a prominent item in The Mandalorian. But I don't know if we're going to actually see it. Like James was making good points about seeing it. I think we're going to hear about it.
Interesting. I was going in with this saying, yes, we will, because I think they like tying stuff together, and the Darksaber is just such a MacGuffin right now in The Mandalorian. If they go back to Old Republic, it could be something that people are like, oh, I know that. So that's familiar. But I think you're right. It is kind of check the box. It was alluded to. We don't need to see that moment. So I'm going to say no. But if they show it to me, I'm sure it'd be really cool.
We saw Tar Vizsla also in the Forces of Destiny. I just remembered. There was a specific scene with Sabine and her brother, and they just had to like go over there and do something with the statue. And they were like, wow, what a great statue and a great person that existed a long time ago. It's like, I don't think if you're thinking the context of that as Forces of Destiny, I don't know that they're necessarily like, we gotta put this in live action, It just seems like it's like long time ago this happened.
Yeah. Is that Maz Kanata who does the introduction to the Forces of Destiny? Forces of Destiny. All right. Now, we've discussed this one a few years ago. We dedicated an entire episode to it, but we know a lot more now. So let's see where we stand today. And this comes from Major John Forsyth. Thank you, John. He said, will a forced ghost ever appear to Grogu? And if so, will it be Yoda? I am saying no and no. I think it'd be too much. That's all I'm going to say. Too much. Lacey, what do you think?
Oh my gosh. I fall into that side of, if it did happen, what would I think? And I'd be like, oh my God, Yoda's talking to Baby Yoda. Oh my God. And I would lose it.
Yoda's talking to Baby Yoda?
Yeah.
Time travel.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying like most people don't really know that his name is Grogu. Like my mom doesn't know his name's Grogu. But anyway, that being said, I don't remember what I said when we initially talked about this off the top of my head. Like, I feel like I said no, and I think I'm going to stick with that no, because it's a lot to have a Force ghost come to you. Like, it has to be a very specific moment. We look at Rey in the sequel trilogy, like she tried and tried and tried and tried, and then eventually had someone come to her when she absolutely needed it. And like
Or
the universe
Kenobi in Kenobi.
well, I was going to get to that. And then you have Obi-Wan
Yeah.
Kenobi who's asking for someone to speak to him, and then finally gets it at the end when, funnily and like interestingly enough, like didn't really need it at that point. But so it was a nice contrast to that. You need it, and then he's like, I didn't need this, but you're showing up now. Weird. But anyway, both characters were very important to the overall arc of the Skywalker saga and like the Chosen One and like the big moment in the universe of saving the day. I don't know if Grogu is going to have that story arc. I don't know if Grogu is going to be that person to save everyone. I might be wrong, but just right now, it doesn't seem like that. It seems like he's playing into helping the betterment of what's going on and like saving people in general or saving Mando and using his powers for kind of selfish reasons. But I don't see him like going to fight Palpatine and like speaking to a Force ghost. So
Right.
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, like why wouldn't Yoda have shown up during the whole Ben Solo, Luke Skywalker situation?
Right.
But he's going to show up and be like, hey, you look like me. So I just figured I'd pop down and show you how to
It
burn
would be
some
cool
books.
to see though.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, James, are we getting a Force Ghost? I know you're not a Force Ghost guy.
I was about to say, John, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to revive the whole like James hates Force Ghosts, yeah, thing that everybody has long since forgotten. But it's funny because I'm listening to you guys talk and I'm like, those were all my points, guys. Like Force Ghosts were kind of problematic because they work for the story, but then you can't always have them. So real life now ruins the lore of these characters are now eternal.
Right.
I just thought they always caused like a problem, but I mean, I think that's it. I think, you know, there really isn't. I mean, you could argue that there is a need. He could be looking for someone. Yoda could be that person, but Grogu is already sort of, I don't want to say turned his back. That's too harsh, but he's chosen not the path of the Jedi at this point.
Mhm.
So that's another reason for Yoda or any Force Ghost not really to show up. I think you also nailed it, John. I look like you, so I'm going to be the one who comes. You know, it's like that feels a little too on the nose. And the other thing too is like, you know, sometimes you think Force Ghosts will show up in like a moment of desperation, like, you know, like Luke sitting there like about to die, and then he's like, Ben, like what, you know? And I feel like Grogu on so many occasions would be like, why are you showing up now? Like I've been in lots of problems, and yet now is the first time that you're showing up, and like it's not even really that bad. I got a guy now, he's pretty cool, you know, he's looking after me. Things are kind of on the up and up, so I don't know why you'd be showing up to me now. Maybe they're
where was the real you when I was in that hallway?
Yeah, just sitting there. Yeah.
So, so
stuck in an egg for 9 years.
I say no, and then no again, and then also no. So,
All right.
but
All right.
you know, I would welcome it if it happened. I'd be like, oh, that's cool.
All right. All right. One more here before we move on to our next segment, and we'll check in with the chat as well. Submission from Patreon General Fulcrum _77 Diana. Thank you very much, Diana. Will TRB be doing a live broadcast from Star Wars Celebration Europe like they did in Anaheim? Fingers crossed. And there it is in the chat. So how about that? All right. So we would love to. We always want to do those sorts of things. So hopefully, you know, fingers crossed. But if we do something like that, we'll make sure, like we have in the past, that everybody is able to see it and whatever we do, because we don't, you know, when it comes to celebrations and stuff, we love going. We know not everybody gets to go. So every time we do something in terms of content and celebration, whether it's a live show or we just, you know, record stuff there, we make sure that all of you get to be a part of it, whether that's through live or through post editing and stuff later. So anything you guys want to add to that?
Go ahead, James.
No. Other than
you think that makes it seem like there's something going on. You're like,
Well,
like
it's always
Robert
one of
Downey
those.
Jr.
It's always one of
Maybe.
the usually the pressure falls on me to make sure that it does get recorded, cataloged in some fashion, and then I'm like, oh, I'm in a foreign country, it's a big flight, so I got to think about the equipment and stuff like that. I would say that we are going to do everything we can to make sure that it's possible that everybody gets part of it, but it is there's like a 1% chance that like it's just
selfie the whole thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like something just doesn't happen. Our intent with actually getting together and having like an audience in front of us too, you know, if that happens, then that's awesome and that would be great. And we would try to do I have no clue. I came back over and you guys are doing something crazy. But I think that's basically it. Like if it's if we do end up doing something like that, we are going to do the best we possibly can to make sure that everybody is able to see it. Yes.
Yeah. Lacey?
Yeah, I'm so excited for Celebration, and I really hope, I don't know why I sighed saying that. I just like it was like a happy sigh, not like a disappointed sigh. And the big thing, I know we recently got a comment, someone saying like, oh, you talk about Celebration a lot. It's because we're really excited about it, but also because we want to make people sure that we're doing our best to have everybody be included. And that's why we talk about it. So I hope that we get to do some type of live event and or panel at the show. We'll see in the coming weeks what that looks like. But if anything, we will be doing something, whether it be a stream from a hotel room or, you know, on the show floor, or what does that look like? But if you can't make it, we're going to try our best to make sure that you feel like you're there.
Yeah,
got it.
Absolutely. All right. Lacey, I saw we have a super chat that came
We
in.
do have a super chat. So first of all, thank you, Brennan, for the super chat. And he asks, what do you think Christopher Lloyd is, or who do you think Christopher Lloyd is playing?
It could be a what? It could be a droid.
Yeah.
I hope he's an alien, because Christopher Lloyd, like he's always played like wacky characters. I think that'd be so cool if they put him in makeup and made him an alien. Though having like a guy in his 80s sit in a makeup chair for hours is probably just not cool. So
he could be voicing something.
Yeah, I think he'll be, maybe, I guess he will be a human, but I hope it's something fun. You know,
let him have a good time.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Peli Motto's dad. Like he comes out of the back and he's like, oh, you forgot the something something, and then like she's like, Dad, get back in there.
I told you. Yeah.
That would be
Mr. Motto.
Mr. Motto.
That would be so funny. But yeah, thank you, Brennan, for the super chat. If you want to be on the show, make sure to send in your super chats. We'll make sure we read them on the show. Otherwise, keep enjoying it. We're having a good time.
All right, it's time to talk about Star Wars news and give our sizzling, spicy takes about it. So, James, it is time for the Resistance Report.
It's the Resistance.
It is time for the Resistance to come. We're doing the Resistance Report. And we have a little bit of a story about the show Ahsoka, if anybody is interested in that. This is a little bit of a tip from just, I guess, Reddit. You know, it's just somebody pointed out that Steph Green, the Emmy and Oscar-nominated filmmaker, specifically for Watchmen, probably most notably, but also Book of Boba Fett, right? Was involved with that.
Yeah.
In her credits for something, it was recently noted that she has Ahsoka in credits. So that must mean Steph Green is directing an episode of Ahsoka. So that's really the story. We want to talk about that for a second. We're having someone from Book of Boba Fett return, and of a lot of notable television. If you look down Steph's IMDb page, it's a lot of one episode of blank, one episode of blank, 2 episodes of blank, and there's some pretty notable shows on there. So it's kind of interesting if you look at which episodes they did and which episodes she did and stuff. So Let's kick it off with that. Lacey, what are your thoughts on Steph Green directing for Ahsoka? Also, I want to throw in there too, we've had some conversation about would Dave Filoni direct the whole series and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
we definitely did. That's a great point, James. We did talk about like what does that look like? Is it Dave Filoni or is it other people? So I'm glad that it actually isn't all just Dave Filoni. We've seen what happens when one person kind of writes it all, directs it all, has all the say with George Lucas in the prequels. Not that I don't love the prequels, but there are some choices there that I think if there were other people that were like, hey, what about this? It would have gone a little differently. So I just always am definitely on the side of collaboration and finding the right people to do the best job possible. And then it's always good to just bounce ideas off of multiple people. First of all, she's extremely talented. This is an amazing choice. I'm really pumped about this. That episode was really great. It's not obviously my favorite episode of the season, but you can't take away all the awesome choices she made and just like the pure talent that you see when you're watching it. I think to pull that episode off and to have as many people as she did that loved it, it's a good sign for what's to come. I also love, of course, seeing a woman directing an episode. That's really important to me. I think getting diverse voices is always important. And views, obviously, more than voices. She's not really speaking over the episode, but yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped about this choice. I think it's a great. She's proven herself in Star Wars, and I think it's the next best thing is to go into Ahsoka.
Yeah, John, thoughts on Steph Green?
It's interesting because I was thinking about the Watchmen, and then everyone's talking about Damon Lindelof now, and how he's a part of this writer's room and this relaunch of Star Wars movies, and he's doing writing the first one. And then you have Steph Green, who was nominated for an Emmy for directing one of his written episodes of The Watchmen. So I like that there's familiarity there. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it's weird. I find it sometimes I like things the best that people like the least for some reason. Like my favorite Book of Boba Fett episode was the last episode because it was just so zany and wild and nuts and action packed. But the more nuanced, artistic stuff, like the episodes with the Tusken Raiders, was really stylistically well shot and well done and like really nice to look at. And she did the second episode. So clearly a lot of talent behind her. Also Academy Award nominated. I think, James, you mentioned she was nominated for an Academy Award for a short film. So just to think, it's not a household name, Steph Green, but this person was nominated for an Oscar and an Emmy. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I might buy a Mazda tomorrow. This person is nominated for an Oscar and an Emmy. That's a huge deal. We always sometimes look at this stuff like, well, she didn't win. It's like, no, she's one of.
Well, she didn't win.
Yeah, she's one of like 0.0005,001% of the population of Earth who's been nominated for those types of awards. So,
and she's still got a gift bag.
Right. I think it's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what Filoni does as a showrunner, because now you're talking about the difference between like in Obi-Wan Kenobi, which people had their issues with the direction of that and what they did with the budget, and then Mando, where you had Favreau with all these different directors, but somehow still made it feel like a cohesive thing because he was hands in the clay, on set with them, working with them, all that sort of stuff. Now you have Filoni who's show running this with, again, all different directors, and it's a limited series as far as we know yet, so they really need to capture it. So it's sort of like that combo between Obi-Wan, where it's a limited series, but also Mando, which is a bunch of different directors, and Filoni showrunning his first thing. Having someone of this talent directing at least one of your episodes has to be a level of comfort for Filoni. So I'm excited to see what they came up with. Obviously, this show's already filmed, so somewhere it's on a MacBook, and thankfully John Boyega is not a part of this, so he can't leak any scripts or anything accidentally by leaving it in a hotel room. But But jokes aside, I'm very interested in this series, as you know, we're constantly focusing on what's ahead of us, which we should be, which is, you know, Mandalorian season 3. Once that show ends, all of a sudden it's going to be Ahsoka time, and then we're going to start, you know, seeing more about what these directors have brought to the table. And I'm really excited because this could be one of those really deep Force related series, and we're going to get a lot of, you know, first iterations of live action characters that we only knew from animation. That's a really big deal too, because as of now, you had Filoni directing, you know, live action Ahsoka. Well, what happens now when we meet, you know, Hera and Sabine and who knows, you know, Ezra, Thrawn? It's a lot of responsibility for a director to do it, and she clearly was able to handle Boba Fett's return after the first episode, which a lot of us thought was like sort of like setting the table. So I consider hers like the first like full episode of Book of Boba Fett, and she did a good job there. So I think we're in good hands. I'm excited to see what she brings to the table.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that I can add to this other than just looking at her body of work and going like, well, that feels very Star Wars. Like, for instance, like she was involved in The Americans, which was very commonly put up against Andor. So it's like, oh, she's got some Andor in her, you know. And then you're looking at Watchmen, and like when you think about Watchmen, you think about like it's superpowers, and you're like, oh, that's kind of connected to the Force, but it's also sort of like time travel and other things. It's like, well, that's very Ahsoka and the World Between Worlds and all sorts of other things. Like Watchmen definitely has some stuff in there too. And then obviously she's already been involved in the Book of Boba Fett, which is very Mandalorian and other, you know, related things to Star Wars, because it is Star Wars. So I don't think there's really a bad note to this at all. It's not like they're bringing in somebody that you'd never heard of, and then you look and it's like sometimes it feels like some of the directors, you're like, I like Rick Famuyiwa at the time. It's like kind of like he did Dope, but like if you didn't see Dope, like who's gonna know who this person is? And it's like,
yeah, that's fair.
How do you even base
fair.
it on that? At least in this case, you're like, well, she's been involved in a bunch of shows that I've seen, and if I haven't seen all of them, I know a few of them, and I know that that's good company to be in. So I think for me personally, I think that that's a good addition, and it is kind of exciting to know that it's still going to be helmed by Dave Filoni, you know, looking over Ahsoka, but it isn't going to be like, all right, guys, I've got like 3 episodes under my belt. Now it's time to direct the whole series.
Yeah.
But let's move on to, you got one other thing?
Yes. I believe we had a super chat come in. So
yeah.
That, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, we did. So Miles is up. Hey, Miles, thanks for the super chat. He said, hey, Lacey, Rey is a Palpatine through and through. # fact.
That is true. Well,
take your money back, Miles.
Thanks, Miles.
I'm just kidding,
Rey,
Miles. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your support, but I hate this. I hate this comment.
We're not supposed to like it. All right, James, what do we got?
Well, we kind of had a big story this week, and it would be hard for me to sort of summarize it for everybody that you know, is listening and maybe didn't catch this, but the big thing to take away kind of from the news that's going on right now is that there's sort of a shakeup happening at Disney, in the sense of you know, there's a certain period where Bob Iger came back and he was, you know, oh, he's back, he's, you know, everything's saved. And now that that's sort of winding down, we're actually looking at like, well, what is he going to do? You know, how is he going to fix the problems, and how is he going to fix problems that maybe even potentially he set up himself, which is what everybody's looking at. Disney Plus. Disney Plus was supposed to sort of be his legacy. And if you know anything about Disney Plus right now, they've marked down that they're, you know, losing a lot of money on it, and it's not quite as profitable. It might not be. I
think it was $1.5 billion.
Yeah, it might not be in a good position to be a huge moneymaker, or like the big thing, the big shift that Disney it was sort of leaning towards and implying. And I think that we've had a few people now, including now I'm trying to find his name right here, Peltz. What's his first name, John?
Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Peltz.
Mr. Motto.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now, and I can only see the name Peltz showing up, but we'll get to him in a second. People like him, but specifically him coming in and trying to say that it seems a little odd that Disney just suddenly out of nowhere had all of their money being run through the parks and being run through features. And then all of a sudden they just sort of like abandon that, take that away. And they started moving towards the streaming service, which seems like it would be easy to make money on the streaming service. So why aren't we just doing
It's Nelson
this?
Peltz of Tree and
Nelson.
Partners.
Yes, yep. Nelson Peltz. Yeah. And he's proposing a few different ways that could switch things up and start making money for the company involving Disney Plus. But he would only be able to act on those things if he gets voted in as one of the chairmen of the board for Disney. And the general consensus, I don't know how I want to say that, is that might not happen because not everybody's understanding they're not in the same world that he is. Like they don't think that will work. He's maybe got a bad idea, but I mean, he's not a guy off the street, right? So there's always the chance that something really could happen and that somebody could be coming in, and later down the line we might look at like, oh my God, I'm glad Peltz took over because he saved the company from falling apart. They were losing over $1 billion on Disney Plus, and then something happened. So we want to look at it from all sides. But I'm going to start with you on this one, John. There's a lot of websites covering this story from all different sorts of angles. What are your thoughts on this move, this possibility, the direction of Disney Plus? There's a lot to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give a shout out to my old buddy Grant at Star Wars Newsnet because he threw a lot of these sources together in one piece. So good job, pal. Hope you're well. I miss you sometimes. But yeah, so the Nelson Peltz thing, yeah, the guy's 80. So yeah, it's funny. I was like seeing him like talk about it. He's talking about like the future of the company, and like I find that so crazy. Like I can't picture like being 80 and like worrying about like my investments.
Like, bro, don't you want to go retire somewhere?
Yeah. So
I don't know,
some people can't. Some people can't turn that switch off, and I get that. And you know, he's very successful, and I understand that and respect that too. But in terms of what he was saying,
clarify as successful. I'm gonna throw that out there.
Yeah, he's a billionaire, so I'll consider that successful. But
okay, that's fine.
But I don't agree with his take on this stuff and like comparing Disney to Netflix, because honestly, I don't think Netflix is putting out all that great of content anyway. I was actually trying to convince my wife to like we should dump it because they keep increasing the price, and then we'll like pick it up again when Stranger Things comes back. But that was denied in the Hoey household, unfortunately. So we'll look elsewhere. But I don't like this idea of comparing those two because I think Disney is IP heavy on purpose. And I think like the idea of like trying to model, I don't think Disney needs to model itself after anybody, no matter what. I know Netflix is the most successful streaming service right now, but Disney can stay in its own lane and do its own thing without trying to morph itself into something that it's not. And who am I to say, and who's Peltz to say that he knows better than Bob Iger? So Bob Iger recently, when he came back, said he wanted to put focus and control back into the hands of his creators, and that includes the presidents of the studios of the IPs, like Kathleen Kennedy and Feige, and people under the 20th Century Fox banner. And I understand his criticism about the purchase of 20th Century Fox and all that stuff, but it does seem like from the people like Puck News, Matt Bellany, and Deadline, that this is something that is more concentrated current noise and not something that's necessarily going to reverberate for a long period of time in terms of this thing. And maybe he's trying to ruffle feathers and he wants to get a seat at the table, and the way to do that is maybe to come from an unorthodox perspective as opposed to just like saying something that will blend in with all the other points of view. It concerned me that it seems like something that might be considered, because it just seems like it abandons the idea of expanding upon Star Wars. Because he's like, you don't need to focus on your IPs. You need to, branch out and focus on other areas. Netflix doesn't have a lot of IPs, and look how big they are. And it's like, yeah, well, they were the first ones, People were getting DVDs in the mail from Netflix. It's a brand that has existed for a very long time and had a strong foundation and lived upon its name for a while and got in the door first. It's going to take Disney a long time. I'm not saying Disney Plus is like finished. I'm not saying it's done. I'm not saying it's peaked, but clearly it's going downward because they took a massive hit this past year. And we've talked about this on the podcast where Star Wars was a movie franchise first. Where Star Wars brings the bread is via the theaters. I think creating Star Wars shows for Disney Plus is very good to sustain subscribers. We still haven't seen how much a new Disney Star Wars show will move the needle to take more subscribers in. I think a lot of it is sustaining who you have. And also added the fact that it's never talked about that 35 to 40% of the subscribers of Disney Plus are out of India, which brings in a lot less revenue than in other places in terms of the pricing model and that sort of thing. So that has to be, that's a big part of, you'll look at subscriber numbers and they'll tell you what the subscriber numbers are when they're doing the shareholder meetings. But when it comes down to the revenue, a $1.5 billion loss is a $1.5 billion loss, no matter how you want to cut it. But I do think they are shifting toward feature films again. And it was a little bit of a hiatus after the Solo debacle. I still think Disney Plus is successful. I'm still enjoying the shows, but I think there's a bad taste in people's mouths after Obi-Wan Kenobi. I still love the series, but you can see the clear budgetary and production difference between how that show is made and how even Andor is made, which is outside of that volume and in real sets, high budgets. And Andor got the lowest viewership. So I think all these things are going to play a factor into what their big moves are. And it seems like, I could be wrong, we may be having a way more affirmed conversation after Celebration if we get hit with a new wave of feature films. I think that's where they're steering. I think they need to not be afraid of Star Wars in the theaters. Don't lean on the fact that you had episodes 7, 8, 9 to follow that massively impressive and successful saga George Lucas created. If you make Star Wars movies and you market them right and you don't film them twice, they'll make money and people will go watch them and they'll have fun with them. So I'm excited for Disney to believe in Star Wars again in a big way. And that big way is in the theaters because I liked Avatar. I don't like seeing, Avatar make $2 billion and then look at Marvel making billions of dollars and looking at Star Wars and them saying like, well, we're trying to figure it out. It's like, no, you were there before all of them. Go back and be the kings and you can do it.
Lacey, I know in our chat you had some opinions on some people in this story.
I'm going to kick it off with a comment from the chat. Brian Ward said, hey, Brian, he said, Nelson Peltz sounds like a villain in a movie where the kids have to save the rec center. Brian, that is exactly the type of person that Nelson Peltz is from my understanding of this story and many other stories. And John is very wonderful. He puts together the show notes and he had sent this article and said, hey guys, make sure you read through this so you know what's going on. And I went deep dive into this, guys. I went through who this guy is, what's going on. I live for the Disney drama. I'm even though I don't really care about business and I'm not a stockholder, I learned a lot of new terms today. I feel much smarter. But that being said, the reason I said earlier to John, it depends what you clarify as successful. This guy is known for basically being the character that Richard Gere is in Pretty Woman. Like he takes companies and then breaks them apart and makes a lot of money. So when I say successful, it's like, okay, you can make all this money, but are you a good person? I guess
no,
that's
absolutely.
My question.
Yeah. I never said anything about it.
That being said, if you're looking him versus Bob Iger, yes, Bob Iger is a very successful businessman. He's one of the best of his generation of our time. And I think a big part of that is that he does care about people. He cares about the people that work for him. He cares about the way he's viewed. He cares about the way the brand is viewed. And for him to have to come back says something. And the fact that he came back and people were celebrating, cheering for him in the parks. Now, a term I learned today is called a flywheel because they said it 50 times in these little segments on CNN and stuff. I get it. The park is the flywheel of Disney. It's just got to make constant money. The problem is you have a pandemic. I think people in the chat were just talking about it. we're I don't want to say unprecedented times, but we're living in a period where we've never dealt with this before, including Disney has never dealt with this before. So it's kind of this weird thing where Bob was like, Bob Iger, I got to clarify because there's multiple Bobs. Bob Iger was like, oh, we're great. Here you go, Bob Chapek. And then COVID happened. And then everything changed. The parks closed. They lost all this money. They were like, okay, we're going to go into streaming. And then things opened up again. People are back in the parks. They're not as great as they used to be because they had to make all these cuts because they were losing money. Now they're losing money in streaming. And all the stockholders are going, you're just losing money. What is going on? But the thing is that they're going through a period that they're just constantly having to pivot, just like a lot of companies. You look at like a Peloton where they bought, they hired all these people to work for them during COVID because they made all this money because all these people were working out at home. And then when gyms opened back up again, people weren't doing it anymore. And then they had to lay all these people off. Like people are kind of going with the flow in the sense of like figuring out how people are operating now, how their habits are changing. That being said, I think this guy needs to tone it down, as in Peltz. He needs to calm down. Now, of course, I don't know him. I'm speaking basically just out of this article and what I saw of him online, which is like an interview that he did. Just chill, man. It's been like what? How many months since Bob Iger's been back? Like, just give him some time to like actually put his plans in motion. I know that they are bringing in a guy from Nike, which is very cool to me. I mean, that's a brand that's like top tier brand. Like everyone knows what Nike is. So to know that they're bringing, yeah, shut up, James.
Is that how you say it?
Is it not Nike?
No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's Nike.
I think it's pronounced Nike. Yeah.
I don't get your jokes, James. Sometimes they're really weird and they throw me off.
I've only ever read it. I've never heard it said aloud. So it might be one of those things.
Anyway, long story short, I think reading this article, first of all, the first thought that popped in my head, no joke, was I was watching the CNN thing about how much money they lost, whatever, 1.5 billion. They're having to deal with Disney Plus. I was like, I have people that yell at me online every day about how much money Solo lost, and they lost $1.5 billion with Disney Plus, and no one's saying anything about that. Maybe sit down. Sit down when it comes to Solo, Star Wars story, because this is a little crazy.
Calm down a little bit.
Are you talking? Wait, you talking about that Solo, Ron Howard's second most successful movie of all time?
Yes, I am.
Right.
You guys want to keep jumping in? Just keep.
I'm supporting your comment.
Okay, great. So as I was saying, now I've lost my train of thought because I've had multiple people jump in while I was talking. Basically, what I was saying is that they need to give Bob Iger time to put his plan into motion. And he came back out of desperation. He didn't come back out of retirement because he was like, you know what? I miss working for Disney. I miss going through the parks and having lunch in the parks and, going to business meetings and doing all these things and having the pressure of the board. No way. There's no way. Like, I'm sure there's a little bit of it because everybody in that position has a little bit of love for it. Yeah. But it has to be out of desperation. There were multiple people that were like, please come back. Disney is going into a direction we don't want. And so that's why he's here. So everybody that's kind of chirping in and chiming in and do whatever, saying, hey, you got to do a better job. You got to do this, this, and this. That is the most aggravating thing. And I'm not even Bob Iger. And I just read this article and I was like, this dude needs to stop. Like, let people do what they need to do. And I just hope that pivoting is more Star Wars movies because I miss going to the movies for Star Wars. TV is great. I love watching stuff in my house in my PJs. I love making my own snacks. However, I do love a Star Wars movie, and I would prefer that over a TV show any day. And that's why I said for a long time that I think the end of Mandalorian is going to end up on the big screen. So that's where I'm at.
So you're saying...
Is this about to be a joke? Is this about to be a weird joke about Nike? Where are you
the thing is I blanked on his first name again.
Nelson Peltz.
Nelson Peltz, more like Nelson Putz, is what you're saying.
Jeez.
That buildup was just not
brutal.
It would have worked if I didn't forget his first name again. No, I look, if I add anything to this at all, it's that number one, I agree with everything you guys are saying. I think that that obviously Disney is in unprecedented times. They're losing money. They just started this big service. It takes a couple years for things to like work out, find their place, make money. This guy's coming in at a time of opportunity and saying, look at this big company that's losing money. We should shake things up. Obviously, it has bad leadership and all this other stuff. And I think generally well-minded people are going to look at that situation and say, no, hold on, buddy. We don't need to vote you in. But I think that if there is some intelligence to some of the arguments that he's saying, I was trying to look at it from his viewpoint. There are a couple things that I've heard people say before that sort of maybe not letting this guy do it, but it's not a terrible point. Bob's point is generally acquisition. He's acquired all of these different companies. And in a lot of cases with a lot of companies, some of those things suffer because of that, because they don't get the attention they need. And theoretically, they could thrive better if Marvel just was Marvel, or if Lucasfilm was just Lucasfilm, and it didn't have this big head over like, well, you have to fit into the Disney umbrella. They could potentially make more money if they sort of separated those ideas. So that sort of makes sense. And we've also sort of talked about this a lot, is that Disney was making a lot of money through their parks, but more importantly to his argument, Disney was making a lot of money in the theater. Now we know what the outside perspective on that is. Obviously the pandemic and other things that have sort of caused that. But there is an argument to be said that all of a sudden, what are you guys doing? I don't see very many Pixar movies in the theaters. They're not making money. I don't see very many Star Wars movies in the theaters anymore. You've all of a sudden shifted to this other thing, and that thing's losing money. So he's saying in the context of Star Wars, it's doing well, but it could be doing way better if you guys would put out movies, right? I sort of see what he's saying, but even in the context of some of the other properties like Marvel, is also maybe doing all right, but look at the other acquisitions that Disney Plus banner up as like their main things, right? They got Nat Geo, and it's like, who's going to Disney Plus for Nat Geo? Why isn't that thing like successful on its own? Why, or Pixar, for instance, like Pixar, I don't think has been very successful at all on Disney Plus, other than movies that were supposed to be in theaters and then for outside reasons have suddenly gotten shifted to Disney Plus, or demoted to Disney Plus in some cases, where the creators are like, it's really a bummer that we worked really hard on this movie and then it just gets a Disney Plus release. Like, we don't see any feedback on that. Like, there was the whole Marvel Black Widow thing where it's like, this was supposed to be a theatrical movie and then they just kind of moved it to Disney Plus. And
Same with Cruella, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's like some of those things feel like, from a certain perspective, you could see somebody coming along and going, hey, Disney, get it together. Stop putting money into this thing that's clearly a sinking ship. Put it back in theaters. Get people going and doing this thing. I see all that. But like I said to start all this, I think we're level-headed people. We're seeing the whole story here. And it does feel like this guy's kind of coming in a moment of a low point for Disney, where they're saying, hey, you guys lost all this money, and he's like, maybe I can be of some service. And
I think he also wants a board seat. I think that's a big piece
totally.
Of this.
Yeah, totally. He's like, maybe I can jump in on this and have some valid opinions.
I mean, Disney responded. They were like, slow down. Like, Disney themselves came out and were like, let Bob do his thing. Bob Iger knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So I think I just say, like, keep an eye on this story a little bit, because this person might have, he might have some good points, but I just don't think it's going to necessarily change the way Disney has been operating for years. Yeah.
I mean, Bob Iger is not like infallible. Like, he's the one, he botched Solo, and he admitted that. He's like, that's on me. Mm-hmm. He's like, we should have.
Are you talking about Ron Howard's second most successful movie?
All right, James. Jeez Louise. He admitted that, and he's had his faults and he's had his mistakes and stuff like that. But I like that he wants to keep the control in the hands of the creatives, and like this guy Peltz was like 106 when Star Wars first came out. Like, I don't need this guy, like this 80-year-old billionaire telling like what we should be like, how they should be telling stories. Like, go talk about how they can save on overhead for cups in the parks. That's fine, but don't go saying like, well, I think you should shy away from these big IPs and do it. Shut up, just shut up, get out of here. Anyway. I think this is going to blow by, and because Iger's only here for 2 years, and then I think this is like a reset for Bob. He's like, I handed it off to the wrong guy. Let me try again.
Well, I think that's pretty much going to wrap Resistance Report this week. We can head towards the end of the show, but if we have any super chats, Lacey, might be a good time to pop them in.
We do, James. So first we have Semper Fi Danny. Hey, Danny and Mark. What's up? So they said, just chilling with Mark at the Oilers game. Congrats on TRB's growth. What do you think Disney has done the most well for Lucasfilm since taking over? That's a great question. We just talked a lot about what Disney's doing wrong. So let's flip it around. So, John, what do you think they've done well for Lucasfilm since taking over? I mean, I think TFA is like, you can't look at that and not say it's awesome.
I think every movie they've made has been great. I've loved them all. I really enjoyed all the live action series. There's not a lot for me to complain about. I think we know the things that they've done wrong, and it's like a lot of stumbling and mess ups with production and stuff like that. But in terms of the stuff that they've made, there's clearly something that gets overlooked, which is they really do respect the history of this franchise, and the people who make it, a lot of them were George's people, and they're still there. Your Doug Changs and Leland Cheese and all those people, and all the ILM people and Skywalker Sound people, a lot of them are all still there. And a big part of the reason why he sold it was because he didn't think he can keep going, but he wanted his employees to still be able to thrive and keep going. So I disagree when people say like Disney Star Wars, because I think there's more care, just as much care about the franchise now than there ever has been, in terms of the people making it. You can say whatever you want about executives and Disney's executives and stuff, but the people making this stuff really do care about it. And you can't watch a Disney behind the scenes documentary about the making of these shows or these movies, whether you like them or not is fine, and say that these people aren't knowledgeable of the history of this franchise and don't care about fine details, all the way down to like the leaking oil from the back of R5D4 in The Mandalorian. Are you kidding me? Like, they care a lot. And I like the fact that you now have someone like a Dave Filoni, who is that one arm still hanging on to that original tree, that apple that fell from that tree, who's rising in the ranks as a creative executive. I think we're always going to be in good hands as long as Dave's still around. So I have a lot of good things to say, and if you've watched the podcast, you know that. So I like that question, and I hope you and Mark are staying warm, Danny, and thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it.
James?
Well, yeah, I think number one, I think Danny's home while Mark's at the Oilers game.
Oh, whoops.
So she's
I read that
nice
wrong.
and warm, cuddled by the fire or whatever. But the interesting thing here, what has Disney done for Lucasfilm? Well, I'm trying to think out of the context of like they've done movies in the past. So like 7, 8, 9, finishing the trilogy, whatever. Like you could argue maybe that Disney helped or whatever, but it seems to me like those things probably would have happened. And there's other little shows that would have gone on Lucasfilm's YouTube channel, or they would have created these things. I'm trying to think, what are the things that, like, if Lucasfilm was still their own company and they were not acquired by Disney, what would we not have? The obvious one to me is Galaxy's Edge. Disney has provided an entire park of Star Wars that we probably would not have otherwise, other than maybe potentially you could think they could have sold to Universal or something like a Harry Potter world, and they would have done something there. But I mean, it still seems like a stretch. It doesn't seem like Lucasfilm would do. It seems like something Disney would do with one of their properties. So we have Galaxy's Edge because they sold to Disney, and I think that's awesome. That is like a legacy that will go down for
point.
years and years and years and years, and it will always be in the parks. Very cool. The other one that I thought of, and again, this is another one of the things where maybe they could have done it with Netflix or something, but Disney Plus, including The Mandalorian and Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett and Andor. I don't necessarily know that there would have been a plan if they wouldn't have sold to Disney, because I don't know. I don't know what they would have done with that. If Lucasfilm started, if they were like, I think we're going to start making TV shows, because they don't do that normally. I have a feeling that Disney said, this is the direction we want to go. Lucasfilm, you are now tasked with making TV shows. And they were like, okay, let's do it. So I think because of Disney, we're getting The Mandalorian and Andor and Kenobi and Ahsoka and the Acolyte and everything that's going to come. I think Disney has done something really great for Lucasfilm and giving them the gift of serialized television.
Yeah, I think Disney has brought a ton of great stuff to Lucasfilm. I mean, just if we're going to the very basic here, they gave them money to like make the content they want to make and like expand the universe into all the different things we see, whether it's, you know, movies, TV, books, comics, collectibles, whatever. I think overall for me, Disney has brought to Lucasfilm the ability to expand to a bigger audience of different types of fans. Like there are things that you like that no one else likes. There's things that everyone likes, no one likes. Like there's all different things in the Star Wars galaxy that you either can choose to follow or not. And I like that. I like that it's kind of a la carte and you get to decide what you want to be all about. You don't have to like everything, and that's okay. And I think Disney brought that. Whereas I believe, you know, before that you had to very, very much like the movies, and that's it. Like, yeah, you could like the books and go into other stuff, but it wasn't the same as it is now, where it's like you literally have separate parts of fandom that like only specific things. And I think that's cool because it gives different viewpoints. It makes conversations interesting. I never meet someone that likes every exact same thing that I like, and that makes it cool. You know, that it reflects the world we live in, where not everybody has the same points of view, and that's okay. And I think that's what Disney brought to Lucasfilm.
Absolutely.
So we have a couple more super chats. Try to get through these. So Aaron, thank you for the super chat, and he said it's for Lacey keeps getting interrupted.
Get out of here.
Aaron.
Are you like, oh my God. Let's keep a tally going forward.
Okay.
Thank you,
John.
no, Aaron. Appreciate it.
He's just joking. Okay, next is David. Thank you, David, for the super chat. Proby1 Kenobi, as we call him.
Expect David on Monday's episode.
Yes.
Yes. And he said, because TRB is awesome. You're awesome, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for the super chat. We really appreciate it. But yeah, that's it for super chats. This has been a very interesting conversation. I don't think we've ever gone down into like the nitty gritty of like money with Disney, but this has been very interesting for me because I don't usually talk about stuff like this.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research for this episode.
It was definitely different. And when I was like reading through the articles, like you mentioned, John, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was like, what, how long is this article? How much do I have to read and try
like
to
Nelson's
understand
response,
about all this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. Nelson's responsible for General Electric leaving Connecticut and like breaking up and doing all these things. And it caused such an issue for the state of Connecticut where I live and like the town of Fairfield. The interesting thing is, I remember someone told me this and it was absolutely crazy, is that a bunch of companies were pitching for General Electric to stay in Connecticut, and they made PowerPoints and they showed like products from GE, like jet engines or whatever. And I remember they had said that they got a presentation where the first slide was a jet engine, which wasn't theirs. Like someone was like, here's why you should stay in Connecticut. And they were like, that's not even our product. And so they left. But he was responsible for breaking that company up, and it caused a lot of issues for Connecticut and like taxes and stuff, which is not great. But ultimately, my college got that building that they used to have, and they have like an ice rink now. So good for them. But
So
anyway,
he's like,
Nelson
don't say I
kinda
didn't do
sucks.
anything for you.
no, I don't care about the ice rink. But
got
all
you
I
an
could
ice
see
rink.
in my mind when I was reading that article was Richard Gere and Pretty Woman, where they're like, "Don't break up our company." And you have Jason Alexander, who's like, "We're gonna break up the company." Like that's that's who that guy is.
When I think of breaking up the company, I think of the Christopher Nolan movie where they go down, starts with an I.
Inception.
Inception, yeah. Because
Hmm.
that's the
Ah.
crux of that movie.
But
is
look at
like,
us.
He either is or isn't going to break up the company.
Look at us talking about taxation in Star Wars. So maybe George Lucas was onto something. There you have it.
Brian did say Disney there wouldn't be any Freetown, so that's probably
Yeah.
the biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
Freetown now.
Yeah.
Still so
Prequel
all right. Yeah. I
memes
mean, I think
exist.
some of the stuff can get a bit heavy-eyed when you're talking about it, but I think it's important for us to, especially with Star Wars news was pretty light, and I knew this was a big story because this does affect the future of Star Wars without question. But I think us, like the three of us, especially becoming more aware of it and understanding the ins and outs of that stuff and why it impacts the future of Star Wars will help inform our discussions about Star Wars going forward. So I'm glad we have this chat because I don't think those types of conversations happen that often on Star Wars podcasts. So I'm glad we were able to do it. And I hope more do it because I think people understanding it is a good thing for good and for bad. But anything else, guys, before we get out of here? Because we have a spice run to get to on Patreon for Michael Fry.
Yeah.
That we're going to be
Which
doing.
is one of our patrons, at a certain level, they get the ability to come in and we do like a live stream for like an hour and
we do a podcast with them.
Basically. And they get to engage in the conversation, lead in a discussion topic, so I always look forward to it because it's sort of out of the box of what we do. We come up with our things, but then we always have a fourth person kind of come in and say like, I'd like to talk about this. And we're like, yeah, let's do that. That's cool. So
that's right.
No, I don't
That's
have
it,
anything
John.
else to say.
Right.
guys are
Well, thank you to everybody for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. We appreciate it very, very much. And just so you know, if you tuned in late, as always, it's on the channel. And as always, but even before we started doing these live regular shows, it'll be on your podcast feeds tomorrow morning, wherever you prefer to get your audio pod as well. So we cover all the bases for you. And just want to say thanks for whether you watch or listen, however you take in TRB. It means a great deal to us. And if you're new, thank you. I know a lot of people joined us last week once we had Greg Grunberg on and did our Mando trailer reaction, which was pretty wild because that had a lot of views too. So that's very cool. Thanks, everybody. And you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey and my movie pod. Just like the movies, we'll be doing a Fight Club next week. Tuesday. Should be out Tuesday, hopefully. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran, on TikTok. It's Lacey Gilleran.
James?
Both Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks, where you can find me.
All right. Patrons, we'll see you in a few minutes for Michael Fry's Spice Run, and everyone else, we'll see you not far from now, Monday morning, with another episode right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.